Thomas sat on the wooden bench beneath the sprawling oak tree in his backyard, gazing at the golden leaves drifting lazily to the ground. The crisp autumn air carried with it the scent of earth and time, the familiar fragrance of a life well lived. His fingers, rough with age, clutched a delicate, wrinkled hand, Margaret's. She sat beside him, wrapped in a thick shawl, her once bright eyes now clouded by the fog of forgetting. They had spent decades under this tree, whispering secrets, stealing kisses, and making promises in the rustling leaves. It had been their sanctuary, the silent witness to their love. But now, Margaret's mind had begun slipping away, her memories fading like the twilight that painted the sky in soft hues. "Do you remember, Maggie?" Thomas whispered, his voice trembling with the weight of years. "This is where I first told you I loved you." Margaret blinked slowly, her gaze searching his face, as if trying to grasp a thought that dangled just out of reach. I don't know," she murmured, her voice laced with confusion. He smiled gently, though his heart ached. "It was a summer evening, much like this but warmer. You wore that blue dress with the tiny white flowers, and you were laughing at something silly I said. And then, just like that, I blurted it out. You turned so red, I thought you might run away." Margaret tilted her head, listening as if hearing the story for the first time. "Did I?" she asked, curiosity flickering in her voice. Thomas chuckled. "You did. But then you kissed me right under this tree." Margaret's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. "That sounds lovely." The days blurred into one another, but Thomas refused to let Margaret's memories slip away without a fight. Every morning, he would wake up beside her, help her get dressed, and guide her to their bench beneath the old oak. He would tell her stories about their wedding day, the birth of their children, the way she used to dance barefoot in the rain. Some days, she would listen with a serene smile, nodding along as if the memories were still hers. Other days, she would look at him with the eyes of a stranger. One afternoon, as the wind carried the scent of burning wood from a distant fireplace, Margaret reached for Thomas's hand, her frail fingers tightening around his. "Tell me about our first dance," she said softly. Thomas felt a lump rise in his throat. It had been so long since she had asked about their past. Swallowing hard, he nodded. "It was the night of our wedding. The hall was small, but filled with all the people we loved. You looked like a dream in your white dress, nervous but happy. And when the music started, I took your hand and we danced like no one else was there." Margaret's eyes glistened with something unreadable. "And what song was it?" He squeezed her hand, his voice barely a whisper. "Our song, Always and Forever." She nodded slowly, the corners of her lips twitching. "I like that." Winter crept in, and Margaret grew weaker. She spent more time in bed, her energy dwindling like the shortening days. Thomas refused to leave her side. He would hold her hand, stroke her silver hair, and whisper stories in her ear, hoping, praying that something, anything, would bring her back to him. One evening, as snowflakes drifted outside their window, Margaret opened her eyes and looked at Thomas with a clarity he hadn't seen in years. "Tom," she whispered, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "I remember." Tears welled in his eyes as he clasped her hand. "What do you remember, love?" She smiled, her fingers brushing against his cheek. "Everything." A single tear slipped down Thomas's face. "I love you, Maggie. And I love you, Tom. Always and forever." That night, Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep, her hands still entwined with Thomas's. He sat with her, holding on to her warmth until the dawn arrived, knowing that though her body was gone, their love would forever linger in the whispers of the old oak. The next spring, Thomas returned to the bench beneath the tree, listening to the wind rustling through the branches. He closed his eyes, letting the memories wash over him. And for the first time in a long while, he felt her presence beside him, whispering in the breeze, reminding him that love, true love, never really fades. As the weeks passed, Thomas found himself lost in the echo of Margaret's absence. The house was too quiet, too empty. He still set 2 plates at the dinner table, still made tea the way she liked it, still reached for her hand in the night. But all that was left was the cold, empty space beside him. One evening, as he sat under the oak, he spoke aloud to the air, to the spirit of Margaret that he felt linger in the golden light of dusk. "I don't know how to do this without you, love." A sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves above him, carrying the scent of lavender, Margaret's favorite perfume. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, imagining for just a moment that she was still there. Their children visited often, their grandchildren's laughter ringing through the house, momentarily filling the emptiness. But at night, when silence reigned, Thomas longed for the touch of the woman who had been his heart for so many decades. One night, as he lay in bed, he dreamt of Margaret. She was young again, wearing that blue dress with the tiny white flowers. They were under the oak tree, the summer breeze lifting her hair as she smiled at him. "It's time to dance again, Tom," she said, reaching out her hand. He hesitated. "But I'm still here." She smiled, her eyes twinkling. Not for much longer. When Thomas woke the next morning, the house was still and quiet, but there was a peace in his heart. He got dressed, made himself a cup of tea, and sat under the oak tree one last time. The spring air was warm, and the scent of lavender drifted through the breeze. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I'm coming, my love." That evening, when his children came to check on him, they found him sitting peacefully beneath the tree, a soft smile on his lips, as if he had simply drifted into another dream. And in the rustling of the oak's leaves, they could almost hear a melody, soft, familiar, the song of two souls dancing together once more, always and forever.